Good evening, everyone. I want to call our meeting to order, and I would like to welcome you to the September 14th, 2015 City of Fayetteville Planning Commission meeting. This is a great opportunity to take your phones and turn them to silent or turn them off altogether. And if any member of the audience would like to have a listening device to help you better hear the meeting, all you have to do is ask a member of staff, and they'll be glad to provide one for you. Mr. Garner, would you please call the roll?
Noble. Here. Selby. Autry.
Here.
Hoskins. Jesser.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Cook. Here. Hoffman.
Here.
Bunch.
Here. Thank you. On our consent agenda tonight, we have the approval of the minutes from the August 24th, 2015 meeting, and several items that are all vacations, including vacation 155161, 2055 East Signal Hill Depot, it's Butterfield Trail Village, vacation 155177, 1375 North Leverett Avenue, Noble Oaks Apartments, vacation 155178, southwest corner of Joyce and Steele Boulevards, vacation 155176, Mark Mills Lane, Summit Place Subdivision, vacation 155157, 688 North Whitman Avenue, First Western Bank, and finally vacation 155087. It was 1005 East Rockwood Trail, L&F Construction. Would anybody like to discuss any of those items, or?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Chesser?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by Commissioner Chesser and a second by Commissioner Cook. Mr. Garner, would you please call the roll?
Noble.
Yes.
Autry.
Yes.
Hoskins.
Recuse.
Jesser.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Hoffman.
Yes.
Bunch.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We have one item of old business tonight. It is administrative item 155124, UDC Chapter 156 variances. And Mr. Garner, would you please give us a rundown on that?
Yes, ma'am. This item was tabled at two previous Planning Commission meetings, and after your last Planning Commission meeting on August the 24th, we actually set up a committee to talk about this particular code change to make sure we were all on the same page for this, what we're presenting to the Commission. So we did have a ordinance review committee of the Commission that met and discussed these code changes. And at our committee meeting, and I'll let those committee members speak after if they want, the discussion generally centered around the requirement for commercial buildings to have a primary entry on all principal facades, and the committee generally wanted to retain the primary entry requirement in the code. However, they wanted to offer some flexibility in case, for unique situations like we've seen recently, the Planning Commission for corner lots, or if there's a safety issue, the Commission could grant a variance. And so that's what we have drafted. These code changes are now limited to Chapter 156 variances. And so you'll see here on page 2 of your staff report, the proposed change includes a new finding for a variance for commercial, office, and mixed-use design and development standards. And it states, a variance of the exterior appearance and design standards may be granted by the Planning Commission if it is determined that strict compliance with the code would result in an adverse safety impact, or if the standard should not apply due to a unique situation. In granting the variance, the Planning Commission may require principal facades without a prominent entryway to be designed with distinctive architectural details, such as changes in wall plane, glazing, human-scale elements such as canopies, awnings, small-scale lighting, or other features, to ensure the intent of the code is met. So hopefully at this point the Commission is comfortable with where we're going with this code change, and we're recommending you forward this to City Council. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any member of the public that would like to discuss this item? Seeing none, I bring it back to the Commission. I'd like to also thank the 3 commissioners that served on our very kind of rapidly put together board, and I know one of them was getting ready to get married and go on his honeymoon, so I especially am appreciative of that.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Chesser.
I had asked a couple of questions about this, and I too am appreciative of the commissioners who met to put this together. I think that this wording is much stronger, or it kind of meets what I was hoping we would get to, which is not make it a suggestion, but it puts the suggestion of variance in the planning commission's hands rather than in the applicant's hands. I think that it's relatively clear, but it gives us a free hand. And unless, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion, and if other people want to discuss it, that's fine. I'm going to move that we approve administrative item 15-5124.
Second.
Okay, we have would anyone like to discuss this before we go on? Okay. We have a motion made by Commissioner Chesser and a second made by somebody down on this end. Okay, I could not see. And a second made by Commissioner Brown. Mr. Garner, would you please call the roll?
Noble?
Yes.
Autry?
Yes.
Hoskins?
Yes.
Chesser?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Hoffman?
Yes.
Bunch?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Our first item of new business is conditional use 155175. It's for 925 North College Avenue, Princess Party Creations. And Mr. Fulcher, would you please give us the planning report on that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Property is located at 925 North College. There's an existing office building there, a string of buildings there that have access to North College as well as Pollard Avenue. The property has parking spaces in the front, about 5 parking spaces along College, at least 5 parking spaces on the back of the building. The applicant's requesting approval for really a small event place for children's birthday parties. Because it's zoned office, it does not allow that by right, and so they've requested the conditional use for the Planning Commission. I think it's a pretty straightforward request. All of this area is being used for non-residential uses. It's a mixture of commercial and office properties. It just happens that this one is an office property and requires a conditional use. We are recommending approval of it with 4 conditions. One would be the Planning Commission determination of use unit 4 on the property, which staff supports. Item 2 would be hours of operation limited to 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week. Item 3 would be a note to the applicant stating that any renovations are subject to applicable building fire code requirements, including ADA compliance requirements necessary in the building, and that they are required to obtain a business license within 60 days of opening. I did speak with the applicant just before the meeting, and she was meandering her way down I-540 or 49, so she was running late, and I'm not sure if she has arrived yet, but I know she is on her way, so
Okay.
hopefully there's not any major issues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant present? What should we do in this situation, Andrew or
Yeah.
Jesse, since we know someone's on their way and...
You can vote for it. I would, if the commission feels comfortable voting in favor of it, I'd recommend just go ahead and vote in favor and approve it. If not, I would recommend wait till the end of your meeting and let the
Okay.
applicant be here.
Thank you very much. Since the applicant isn't here, is there any member of the public that would like to discuss this? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioners?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Cook?
I don't see any problem with that, honestly, so I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion.
Okay.
Second. To, approve CUP 15-5175 with the 4 conditions stated by staff. I'm all
Thank
stepping
you.
Man.
Thank you. We have a motion made by Commissioner Cook and a second by Quick Draw Autry down at the end here. Mr. Garner, would you please call the roll?
Noble?
Yes.
Selby?
Yes.
Autry?
Yes.
Hoskins?
Yes.
Chesser?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Hoffman?
Yes.
Bunch?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Our next item is conditional use 155108. It is for 1923 East Joyce Boulevard, Butterfield Trail Village. Mr. Fulcher, would you please give us the planning report on that, please?
Ma'am, and I will go ahead and cover the conditions of the large-scale development associated with the conditional use as well. After feel like I start something in Butterfield Trail Village by always saying everyone knows where Butterfield Trail Village is. At Joyce and Old Missouri, we've done a number of conditional uses in large scales over the last couple of years. The property's been developed since the early 1980s, and they've done a number of expansions over the last several decades. They're up to about 350 residential units. The Planning Commission has seen a new dining lodge, fitness center, and assisted living center between 2009 and 2013, and they are coming back with about 26,000 square foot convocation center, which essentially is a large meeting hall. Again, another use for the residents of Butterfield Trail Village, and more of a community space for the residents there. That is categorized as use unit 4, and that is the reason why they're requesting the conditional use. Again, as a kind of a function and a use for the residents, staff feels that this is a compatible use within the interior of the property. It's going to be located over some existing drive aisle areas and adjacent to their existing facilities, and so it'll really be interior to the site. So staff has recommended approval of the conditional use with 3 conditions. One would be determination of compatibility. Staff feels that the expansion interior to the site is appropriate and compatible with adjacent properties along Joyce and Old Missouri. Item 2, that the design be consistent with the elevations that they submitted. For the large-scale development, we've seen, again, a number of large scales out here. Really the only street improvements that aren't complete in the area, Joyce Boulevard is fully improved, as well as Old Missouri, would be installation of 2 full cutoff streetlights along Joyce Boulevard. There are no streetlights along Joyce in this area, and then additional dedication of right-of-way of 3.5 feet along Joyce Boulevard as well. There is existing public sidewalks, so it would just be a matter of any damage to those during construction would need to be repaired by the developer. All the other conditions are straightforward, and again, we are recommending approval of the conditional use in the large-scale development. Thank you.
Thank you. I forgot to announce the large-scale development, but we usually cover them together. So large-scale development is 155099 for 1923 East Joyce Boulevard, Butterfield Trail Village. Is the applicant present?
Yes, ma'am. I'm Tom Hanley with Craft and Toll, representing Butterfield Trail Village. We've read the conditions of approval, don't have any problem with them.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Henley. We'll call you back up if we have any questions. Is there any member of the public that would like to discuss this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioners?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Chesser.
I sat on the subdivision committee for this item, and it appeared totally straightforward to me, which I think Commissioner Cook's nodding down there too. There may be discussion, but given that, I'm going to go ahead and move to approve CUP 15-5108 with staff recommendations of approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve made by Commissioner Chesser and a second by Commissioner Cook. Mr. Garner, would you please call the roll?
Noble?
Yes.
Autry?
Yes.
Hoskins?
Yes.
Jesser?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Hoffman?
Yes.
Bunch?
Yes.
The motion passes. Oh, sorry, Selby.
Yes.
Had you marked out as not being here.
Well, you just talked to me the last time. Do we have any,
Are we ready to consider this one?
yeah, I was about to say, do we have any discussion on large-scale development 155099?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Chesser.
Same thing. This item is, this building is totally interior to the site. Totally straightforward as far as I can tell. Let's see, Commissioner Cook nodding again. So I'm going to move that we approve LSD 15-5099 with staff recommendations of approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve made by Commissioner Chesser, a second by Commissioner Cook. Mr. Garner, would you please call the roll?
Noble?
Yes.
Selby?
Yes.
Autry?
Yes.
Hoskins?
Yes.
Jesser?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Hoffman?
Yes.
Bunch?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. On to our next item. It is large-scale development, wrong one. Lot split for 155164 John Garrison Road, presented by Gibson. And Mr. Thompson, would you please give us the staff report on that?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This property is located outside of the Fayetteville city limits within the 1 mile planning area, approximately 1,600 feet south of John Garrison Road. It's an approved dirt road. The acreage is approximately 40 acres, just a little bit over 40. And again, it is in Washington County. The proposal has been to split this lot into 4 parcels. It's currently a single parcel. 2 5-acre lots, 2 15-acre lots, and each of these lots would have no street frontage. So I forgot to mention that the 40-acre lot has no street frontage, whatever, and once the subdivision is finished, if it's approved, none of those lots would have any street frontage either, as required by the development code. The property has currently does not have access to water, does not have access to city sewer. That's not an uncommon condition this far out in the county, however. Surrounding lots are typically large. These things, 40 acres, 20 acres, there are 1 or 2 smaller 5-acre parcels nearby, but largely these are large, undeveloped, unsplit agricultural lots. Staff is recommending that this waiver of the street frontage requirement be denied. We find that the subdivision would create 4 lots out of 1 without street frontage at all, and that 40-acre parcel can be developed right now with a single-family home as it is, so it is possible to use that property. But we don't feel that we should create 4 lots, essentially a subdivision, without meeting our subdivision requirements. Thank you. If you have any questions here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. Is the applicant present? If so, please come up to the microphone, state your name, and tell us about your project here.
Okay. My name is James Gibson. I'm the owner of the property. The 2 families here that are wanting to purchase the property to build 2 single-family homes on it are here, Holmes and Miller. And basically that was one thing that I didn't hear him say, is they're wanting to put 2 homes on this 40-acre tract. The reason they're doing 4 lots is for financing purposes. There is difficulty in secondary market financing with a 20-acre tract and a house, and so basically they wanted to create 4 parcels to put their houses on the 5-acre pieces and then have their 15 acres just adjacent to their house. So they are looking to put 2 homes on this 40 acres. It is accessed by a 60-foot wide easement from John Garrison Road. When it gets to the property, it goes down to a 30-foot easement across the first tract and to the other tracts. They are not trying to use city utilities. They're planning on drilling wells, and Ozarks Electric already has power right there at the property. There are properties around it that are accessed by easement just like this. This is the last property. I own 85 acres there. This 40 that they want to buy is the line for the planning area. It goes right through the middle of it, and my other 40 is not in the planning area. That's how close it is to not even being in Fayetteville's planning area. So they are not using any utilities, anything like that, and there are multiple parcels around it that are much smaller that are accessed by easements. I've got aerial here showing some other property that I actually used to own, 5-acre lots, 1-acre lot, all accessed by easement, just right next to the property. So we just feel like it makes sense to let me sell the property to them, let them build 2 homes on 40 acres. I don't believe there's any opposition to it by neighbors or anything like that.
Okay.
And let me know if you have any more questions.
If we have any more questions, we'll call you back up.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you. Is there any member of the public that would like to address this issue? Come up to the microphone and state your name and give us your comments.
My name is Marty Kale, and I own 10-acre plot or lot adjacent to the easement that Mr. Gibson was speaking about. And myself and other neighbors that were next door to us that also owns a 10-acre lot that uses an easement essentially that he would be using as well. We have no problem with this. There has been anything from theft and things back up in this area, and we believe by having a couple of nice homes back there, which we'll also be building this next year on our 10-acre lot next to the drive that they will be using, we see no problem. It will be nothing but public safety as well. So myself and our neighbor next to us do vote yes to allow this to split. We just ask that you hear that.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Is there any other member of the public? Seeing none, I close the floor to public comment and bring it back to the commissioners.
Chair.
Commissioner Chesser.
Well, I guess I feel like, Quinn, can I ask you, my guess is that this is just sort of something you feel you would have to oppose on principle. Is that correct? Oh, I'm not trying to, I'm saying there's no street frontage and you're exacerbating a problem.
Well,
right?
you know, I think the standard answer would be it doesn't meet our development requirements. So,
Right.
you know, are you asking me what my personal feelings are? I won't.
No, I'm not asking for your personal opinions.
Right. So it doesn't meet our development code. We don't feel that the creation of 4 lots out of, you know, I understand that, I didn't understand that they would like to build 2 houses on the 4 lots, but it still doesn't change the fact, according to the development code, that 4 lots are being created out of 1 without street frontage. So,
Right.
you know, it is near the boundary for the planning area. That's true, but it's there all the same. So, it's from the staff point of view, it's there's not another opinion that we could really recommend.
Okay, and sorry, I didn't mean for that sounded worse than I meant for it to be. I was just saying there's sort of a technical rule of law we're kind of having to follow here, I'm guessing.
I think just from the planning division, it makes just good planning sense to have streets and roads when you have
Sure.
homes. And so just not just on principle, but on common sense as well. That's why the ordinance was written. When you have homes, when you have civilization, it's a good thing to have public right-of-way and public streets to the homes from safety reasons. One of the gentlemen mentioned theft in the area. That can happen when you have homes off of private access easements, and also emergency response. When you get a 911 call, it's a lot more difficult for somebody to provide service quickly when you don't have a street. And so we are opposed to it on not only just because it's a black and white law, we're just checking the box. When you're in the planning area of Fayetteville, this potentially will be annexed into the city. Even if it's not annexed into the city, this is under the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission, and you do have to think about the public safety and why we have subdivision regulations. So,
Okay,
that's
I understand
where we're
that.
coming from.
And we have to plan out for the future, and if we're annexing this in, we would be sort of buying this problem later down the road if we approve this now. That's kind of what you're saying, right? Not buying.
Correct,
You know.
and we're potentially creating a public safety problem for the people that are building homes here.
Okay.
And encouraging it. I think,
So,
one of the things too, I'll just point out, I don't remember which gentleman I spoke to on the phone about this, maybe 1 or 2 of them, but there is an option. The code would require them to build a road to get back there, which that's still an option, which that's what we would encourage them to do if they want to split this into 4 tracks. They could build a gravel road, to get back there and dedicate right-of-way. That would come through the Planning Commission probably, or through that process.
That was what I was going to ask. So the prescription would be basically to turn this access easement currently into a public right-of-way,
Right.
correct?
Yep.
Or some method. But obviously, they don't control that access easement to that degree, right? That's a neighbor's property, we assume.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, so, I guess, you know, I've got property out in the, kind of in the middle of nowhere in another county, not in Washington County. And you know, it's off the beaten path, and to some degree, I hate to see people unable to, develop that property in some way. And I find it maybe a little bit steep of a requirement to make them acquire and convert this access easement into a public street and build it for two, I mean, like, maybe that it's just prohibitive and they can't do it, but it doesn't quite meet what I would want to go with, even given your considerations for public safety. So I bet there are other people that want to speak this now, so I'm going to yield the floor. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoskins.
Quinn?
Sir.
If they were to flip this easement to a public right-of-way in the county, would the county have to agree to accept that?
I believe they would.
Okay. Madam Chair, may I call the applicant up, please?
Yes, please. Mr. Gibson?
Mr. Gibson, the problem that you have, of course, is you're in no man's land. You're going from this to, I want to subdivide, but I don't really want to subdivide.
Right.
Okay? Because it's expensive. Have you considered doing, as we were discussing a moment ago, flipping that private easement to a public right-of-way and
We don't know
graveling it and all
we
that?
don't know the expense of that. We are gonna gravel it. We're putting in a really nice road with SB2 gravel all the way to the property from John Garrison Road. It'll probably be nicer than John Garrison Road is.
Okay. Well, my opinion is, of course, we have development regulations that we have to follow.
Right.
And, I have no problem supporting this split that you're wanting to, under the condition that easement becomes a public right-of-way, and it does get improved like you're saying, and the county is okay with it. I don't know if that's something you're able to do here tonight or not. I don't think it is.
I don't either. We did run this through the county prior to it coming to Fayetteville, and they had no problem with the split at all. They said that shouldn't be any issue, and so they were kind of surprised when I called Juliet back and said, we're having to go, get this done, but our understanding was, and I had talked to Mr. Garner, and I believe Mr. Miller had talked to Mr. Garner and, someone on the technical review, and, when I talked to Mr. Garner, I sat down in his office, and he said, you know, this doesn't meet our requirements due to the lack of street frontage, but you're barely in our planning area, it's 40 acres, it's, you know, it's not likely to not pass this by the planning commission. That was his wording to me at that time. And so, you know, the Millers and the Holmes, we've kind of gone under that, idea this whole time, and they've spent $2,500 on a survey now, ready to close the property, and it's gonna throw a wrench in a lot of plans here.
Let's get focused back in here a second.
Okay.
Give me 1 minute, okay? Mr. Garner, you seem to, when he made the comment that you thought this was gonna pass the planning commission, you seem to have had a look on your face. Maybe you want to...
I don't remember ever speaking with Mr. Gibson about this, and somebody I mean, it's possible I did talk to him. I talked to some gentleman on the phone. I don't believe it was Mr. Gibson.
That was Mr. Miller you talked to on the phone.
Yeah,
but
I mean, those kinds of questions, sometimes you get questions over the phone or something like that, but when I spoke to Mr. Miller, I did not indicate support of the proposal, and we typically, you know, talk somebody through the process, but anyway, that's kind of beside the point if we're here tonight.
Okay, I just thought you might have something you wanted to say. Okay, well, thank you, appreciate it. Madam Chair, again, I don't have a problem supporting this under the premise that private easement is flipped to a public right-of-way, and that, the very minor improvements we're talking about occur or what have you, but until that time, I cannot support it, and, but what might be a good idea is maybe table it for tonight, give the applicant a little bit more time to visit with the county and what have you, and find out what the cost of doing a gravel road might be. Because I don't think it's gonna be as expensive as what you may think. Okay? Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Chesser.
I guess I could find myself in the same position. It sounds like they're gonna build a gravel road already. I would probably be willing to be, I mean, even if they build the gravel road down that easement, I don't think it'll give them road frontage. I mean, it won't give them access to both properties, right? Unless they dedicate, or I guess they're gonna improve that whole thing, that big L. Sorry, I'm looking at the Google Maps here. In any event, even if they were to get back to the corner with public right-of-way, it looks like they're gonna improve it all the way along there. So, given that they're planning on building the road already, if they're willing to get, turn that into a public access easement, then I would absolutely be able to support it. I guess I will fall down on the same side as Commissioner Hoskins on this. And I'll yield the floor. Thank you.
I have no doubt that they're going to, they'll have to build a fairly decent road there if they're going to build a house, because they can't get blocks, they can't get lumber delivered, they can't get a dump truck, a cement truck, they can't get any of that stuff out there unless they have a fairly decent road, so. But, I'm kind of siding with Commissioner Hoskins also on this.
Okay, Madam Chair, seeing no other discussion, actually, can I call the applicant back up?
Mr. Gibson, please come back up.
So it's sounding like we're leaning, here's where I'm leaning. I'm leaning towards tabling. Okay. Is there what we haven't established is, I don't know if you own that access easement,
I do own that.
You do?
Yes.
And is it
I thought so.
the potential that you would be willing to make it into a public right-of-way if that's what it took to make the sale?
I guess so, yeah.
Technically, I guess you're gonna lose.
About 2 acres. It's about 2 acres.
Right, but I mean, it's under a access easement now
I bought it
anyway.
just for that.
Right.
Yeah, I bought it just for the easement, or just for the access to the property, and, yeah.
It sounds like you're gonna build this gravel road anyway.
We are gonna build, we're all doing that together, and, one of the buyers, her dad owns a dozer company, he's gonna do that for us.
Right.
We're gonna put nice gravel on it. I just don't know how long that approval, they're wanting to start a house, things
Sure.
like that. I don't know how long that approval takes, I don't know what that entails through the county, anything like that.
So that's what I asked you back up here for.
Yes, sir.
It's my inclination to ask for a tabling of this, which is basically gonna put it on hold and let you get your ducks in a row.
How long
And
will
I
that-
can table it date specific, or I can table it for we can table it for 2 weeks, or I can table it for longer, and I kinda wanted to get a feeling from you.
So we would come back to another meeting?
Yeah, and I think, Andrew, can I table it can I let them be the trigger to end that tabling, or do I have to table it to some specific date of some sort?
I think you could do it either way.
So basically, what I'd be inclined to do is table it in such a way that when you've got it figured out, then you contact planning and tell them to get you back on here. You come back in, you say, we did the things you asked, and I suspect, I can't promise, but you'd get my vote anyway, and I suspect you'd probably get some other ones.
Okay. All right, so that's through the county. You guys we don't need to come through Fayetteville to get a dedicated right-of-way. We just need to have.
That I'll let Andrew.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you need to give the applicant specific direction on what you're looking for.
Okay.
Under the city requirement, you would have to build a public road. The city would have to review the plans for the road, issue a permit, and the county would also do so. We would go out and inspect the road as it's being constructed, and then after the road is completed, then they would file the final plat. That'd be the inspection of the road, this plat would be recorded, and the right-of-way would be dedicated.
So, but it doesn't have to meet, do we have a classification for gravel road?
It would
They're not
require,
gonna have to put pavement out there.
it would
are they?
require a variance to come back through, the planning commission would have to approve a variance to allow it to be a gravel road.
Okay.
So, yeah, it would, the lot split, I mean, would not be able to be completed until the road was completed, which is that's the typical requirement for any subdivision. The road has to be built before you can create the lots. It's like any subdivision that you're looking around town or in the county, you have to go through the process of, go through the county, they review the road
It's
layout,
like plating at the
and
end
then
of the-
they approve the road, you build the road, when it's completed, then the county inspects it, the city inspects it, then everybody signs the plat, and it's a done deal. So it's not like they could just, get something on paper and then it's
They
done.
can't dedicate the right of way and that be enough.
Correct.
The road has to be constructed, just like, large-scale development.
Right, the city would not want the right-of-way to be accepted until it was built in a road that we could accept, or the county would. So,
Okay.
How stringent are the requirements for the road, as far as, do you know the requirements for that?
Well, that's what he was saying. We would have to grant you a variance.
Okay. I was curious if you knew like the width or, anything like that, are we talking about a 60-foot wide road or,
yeah,
Good Lord.
I think for a county gravel road like this, I think you have a 60-foot right-of-way and a gravel road with the ditches.
But
like-
the road's not 60
No.
foot wide, you're not saying?
No.
28 feet.
It's similar to what you would see on John Garrison Road, probably, would be what they would require.
Basically, I think, given what you've said, that it's gonna be better than the existing road out there, it's possible. Anyway,
It is probably, we weren't gonna do ditches or anything like that, it was gonna be a driveway. It goes through a pasture.
so here's where we're at. I think we can table this and give you some more time, in which case I'd be happy to motion to table it so that you trigger when you wanna come back and talk to Andrew and get back on with us. Or I can table it date specific, which means 2 weeks, 4 weeks, or some named date in the future. And if we get to that date and you need more time, it's possible we could table it again.
Okay. I think the only other question I have, do you have anything you wanna say? Okay. Would it make any difference if it was only 2 tracks?
I don't know. Probably, my guess is no, because you're exacerbating a situation that's unacceptable to the city already, but I can't answer that. That would be them, and I bet they would want more time.
If that's our only option, I guess, that's our only option. My hope was that, of course, there's multiple pieces around it that are exactly the same, and it's not gonna negatively affect anyone that I see, because it's gonna be just like properties around it.
I understand that. I'm just, do you have a preference on the table? I know the chair wants to, so,
How about 2 weeks?
okay.
Is that okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I yield the
Okay,
floor.
thank you very much, Mr. Gibson. Commissioner Autry,
Well, I guess
get my attention down here.
I was trying to get to you before, but
Oh, sorry.
it's almost as we're telling you we're gonna table it.
Yes, sir.
I would like to have asked you before what you just said, do you wanna table it for any length of time, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, or these people are ready to move forward, you're ready to move forward?
Yes, sir.
They know what they're getting into as far as emergency, fire. It's an unusual circumstance. It sounds like they're gonna provide a road.
Yes, sir.
I know you've already said you are willing to table it for 2 weeks, but I don't want it to be like, you have to table it for
Right.
whatever time we say.
Yes, sir.
Is that your preference?
If you guys vote on it and vote it down, what are our options? Can you tell me that?
Yeah.
Mr. Garner?
If it was denied, then a member of the planning commission that voted against the item could, ask it to be reconsidered, and then at that point, you could make a motion to table,
You mean tonight? Oh, sorry, Madam Chair.
yes, I think you could do that.
Well, So does that affect anyone on the commission's opinion of tabling or not?
It affects me because I feel like, he has a right to either table it or not, so I would be in support of moving forward on this without it being tabled.
So, to make sure I understand, if you voted it down, someone could make a motion to reconsider it, and we could table it at that time.
That's what I'm understanding.
And if, the motion to reconsider would have to pass
And,
in order to even reconsider the item.
But if it failed tonight, it could be appealed to the city council.
yeah,
My hope is that, the way I look at it, I'm just a common sense kind of guy, and I understand safety issues. I just look at all the properties around it, like I said, and it's not doing anything different than anything else out there. It's, to me, it makes sense to let me sell the property, let them do what they want with the property. They understand the concerns. And so I would say, I would love to see you vote on it.
okay. All right.
And I appreciate your,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
It's an unusual piece of property here because our planning area changes. It doesn't, it's not a static line. And I know there are properties around here, all over the countryside, there are properties that are, a gravel road and a couple of houses at the end of it, but we have to follow our guidelines and our, planning, and it puts us in a position where, we like to be as common sense as we possibly can too, and, sometimes it works better than others, I think, so. Anybody have a motion to make, or?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion on lot split 15-5164, with all the requirements and conditions set by the staff, be voted on tonight for approval or not.
Okay,
Is that correct?
I think you would just move to approve.
Just-
Yeah, you should do either to
just
approve
move
or
to
deny.
approve, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Autry. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, we have a, motion to approve made by Commissioner Autry and a second made by Commissioner Selby. Mr. Garner, would you please call the roll?
Noble,
No.
Selby,
Yes.
Autry,
Yes.
Hoskins,
No.
Chesser,
Yes.
Brown,
No.
Cook. No. Hoffman,
No.
Bunch.
No.
Motion fails.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Hoskins.
I'm gonna be the nice guy.
Really?
Okay. Before I make my statement, I got a question for staff. Andrew, is there any provision in the code? I know that sometimes, first off, I appreciate the position they're in, they wanna get their deal done, okay? And that, it would be nice to have the transfer of deeds done to collect that cash to be able to put in this road. Is it possible that these folks could bond that gravel road? Is there any, there's a provision in the code for sidewalks and
No.
trees and whatever, I don't know.
No, if the commission wanted to go that route, I would just recommend you just give them the waiver that they're asking for. And to build the road, they have to go through the preliminary plat process. This is a subdivision, so at this point, they'd have to go through preliminary plat and final plat, like a regular subdivision.
Okay.
So they can't, this is no different than, as far as the procedure of any other subdivision. That the city has to review the road, we have to accept the right-of-way, that's the preliminary plat process. When you see a subdivision come through the commission, that's what this is. It's a small subdivision, but it is a subdivision in order to allow for us to review the road.
I didn't know if we could possibly offer an acceptance since it is up in the county, and, they would go through the process, the design, the approval and all that, but actually physical construction of the road, I didn't know if it was possible that they might be able to bond that.
I don't think so. I've never
Okay.
seen anything like that.
Okay, all right. Sorry, I tried. Madam Chair,
Commissioner Hoskins.
make a motion, I guess it's a motion to reconsider, isn't it? And table, motion to reconsider.
One at a time.
Yeah.
So can I second
Motion to
that,
reconsider.
even though I voted yes? Or does that have to be a denier to second? I did vote yes.
I'll second it.
I don't know.
There you go. Thanks, Commissioner Cook. Thank you, appreciate that.
Okay, we have a motion to reconsider and table the item now.
No, just to reconsider.
Just reconsider, okay. A motion to reconsider
We had to, sir.
made by Commissioner Hoskins and a second by Commissioner Cook. Mr. Garner, would you please call the roll?
Noble?
Yes.
Selby?
Yes.
Autry?
Yes.
Hoskins?
Yes.
Jesser?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Hoffman?
Yes.
Bunch?
Yes.
Hey,
Motion passes.
that's unanimous.
Madam
too.
Chair. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to table, where is it? LSP 15-5164 until the next scheduled planning commission meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to table made by Commissioner Hoskins and a second by Commissioner Chesser. Mr. Garner, would you please call the roll?
Noble?
Yes.
Selby?
Yes.
Autry?
Yes.
Hoskins?
Yes.
Jesser?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Hoffman?
Yes.
Bunch?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Do we? 2 weeks.
2 weeks from tonight.
So what is that? I can't count.
That's 28.
28, okay. Thank you very much. Get my... Okay, our next item is large-scale development, 155167. It is northeast corner of Van Ash and Steel Boulevard, Watermark Residential. Mr. Fulcher, would you please give us the staff report on that?
Madam Chair, northeast corner of Steel Boulevard and Van Ash Drive, this is lots 8 and 14 of CMN Business Park Phase 2. The property is bound on the north and east side by 5 acres of tree preservation area and a deed restriction area that were provided under a previous plat, so that will serve as our tree preservation for this piece of property. Also within that, those areas are a tributary and Mud Creek, or tributary of Mud Creek as well. The applicants are proposing to develop about 17.5 acres with 13 buildings containing 306 units and 506 parking spaces. The property, as you remember, was rezoned to C3 to allow, it would include multifamily development. Prior to this, it was zoned C2. They did not have the build-to zone in the C3 zoning district, but they have provided the majority of their property frontage with buildings that front the street. The one exception is at the northwest corner of the property along Steel Boulevard, where there's some wetlands that they are trying to avoid. In fact, that was something that was discovered, at least the restrictions were discovered, I believe, during the design of this proposal, so they had to start kind of moving the pieces around to get it to fit. But overall, we're pleased with the overall layout and feel that it is consistent with some of our form-based zones I know that were discussed when the rezoning went through originally. Van Ash Drive is a collector street on this side, on the east side of Steel Boulevard. Steel Boulevard is a principal arterial, so pursuant to our access management ordinance, they're actually only required or allowed to take access off of Van Ash. They are proposing one driveway off of Van Ash and one off of Steel Boulevard. Feel that this is an appropriate location, is right across, we're lined up with the curb cut within the median and lined up with a shared access drive on the west side of Steel Boulevard. Also makes sense to have this many units kind of dispersed onto 2 different streets. So we are supportive of what they're proposing as far as access management is provided. There are 4 determinations by the Planning Commission. One is determination of urban residential design standards. There's 11 buildings of the same type, and so they're required to differentiate these into different materials, different roof forms, and different colors. They have provided that. They have differentiated all of those. They've also included several accessory buildings on the site. The requirement there is that they're compatible and complementary with the principal structures, and they have met that requirement as well. So we're supportive of all aspects of their urban residential design standards. Item 2 is a variance of the access management to allow that second driveway on Steel Boulevard. Staff is supportive of that. Item 3 is determination of street improvements. This got the most discussion when this was reviewed at the subdivision committee. Not necessarily what was being proposed, but kind of a larger discussion with signalization at Steele and Van Ash. But as far as what we're recommending for street improvements, they're proposing to put on-street parking along Steele and Van Ash. We're excited to see that. We feel that that will help traffic speeds, reduce traffic speeds in this area. On Steele Boulevard, they do get pretty high. If you remember, the Uptown Apartments on the north end of Steele at Joyce are also providing on-street parking. So we feel like we're starting to get a changeover from a very wide and high-speed roadway. If you look at the lane widths, they're close to 13 feet wide, so it's designed more like a bypass than a street. And so we feel that these improvements that they're making will help a lot as far as pedestrian safety and traffic speeds in the area. So Steele Boulevard, they will be pulling the curb back, so pulling out the curb and then moving that back, maintaining the existing sidewalk, and that will occur on both streets. So they'll be reducing the lane width on Steele Boulevard to consistent with our master street plan requirements, which is about 10 feet wide. They'll provide the 8-foot on-street parking lane, 7 feet of green space, and then they'll maintain the existing 6-foot sidewalk. Along Van Ash Drive, again, removing the curb, moving the curb line back to allow for that 8 for the on-street parking, and then they'll maintain the 11-foot travel lanes and 11-foot center turn lane, and then maintain the existing 6-foot sidewalk. And then to address some of the traffic concerns that exist out at Steele Boulevard and Van Ash, if you've ever gone through that section, there's not a lot of traffic all the time, but there's a lot of confusion as to who's supposed to stop and who's supposed to go. So trying to address that by asking them to install some stop signs and restripe all 4 pedestrian crossings at that intersection, because again, the amount of pedestrian traffic is going to increase quite a bit in this area. That is where I think our discussion started at subdivision committee about signalization at this intersection and why we weren't looking at an assessment for this project and why it hadn't been installed in the past and those types of things. And from our research and from my recollection, beginning in about 1995 when CMN was rezoned up through about 2001 when Phase 1 and Phase 2 were approved by the Planning Commission for preliminary and final plat, the city and the developers, there were some requirements for the development team to install a number of the streets in this subdivision, so Mall Avenue, Steele Boulevard, extension of Joyce, et cetera. And then there were some cost shares with the city on some of those as well to widen those into 4-lane sections. And then there was an assessment for signalization at 5 intersections within CMN, and this was one of those intersections that was required to be signalized, and the city took the money from the developers for that improvement. And so we've already received that money. The reason it wasn't installed is because it was never warranted, and I don't know if it would even be warranted today. We haven't looked at the warrants of that intersection. But it wasn't installed because it wasn't warranted, and because it wasn't installed then, the cost of inflation, materials, et cetera, money really is gone now. So all that money for signalization has been spent. So we feel that the assessment has already been put in place on the developers of CMN for this intersection. So I think any future signalization would likely be something the city would have to cover at some point in the future when those improvements are warranted. So that's why there's no assessment recommended for this project. I also looked at several other projects in the area along Van Ash and Steele Boulevard, and none of those were ever required to provide an assessment for signalization at this intersection. Item 4 is determination of parks fees. The Parks Recreation Advisory Board reviewed the project in August and recommended accepting money in lieu of approximately $171,360. The final cost will be based on the actual number of units constructed. Item 5 is in reference to some comments by engineering, both the subdivision committee and the agenda session on Thursday about final grading approval along their east side. They're adjacent to the streetside protection zone, and they're really walking the line along that boundary area. Sure that the applicant is fully aware of where their retaining wall and grading limits are. They've met with the floodplain administrator who administers the streamside protection zone boundaries. So I know that they're going to have to make some provisions to modify that line slightly. Any slight modification staff can handle administratively, of course, if there is major change to the site, which I don't expect that there will be. It would come back before the Planning Commission for a major modification. And then item 8 is just a reminder on private developments with private internal streets. It is a requirement that the developer install and maintain street signs for the perpetuity of the project. And then the other conditions are standard for large-scale development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fletcher. Is the applicant present?
Yes, ma'am. I'm Tom Henley with Craft and Toll, representing Watermark Residential. We've read the report, don't have any problem with the conditions of approval, and hope that you guys don't either.
Thank you very much. We'll call you back up if we have any other questions. I'll open the floor up to public comment. Is there any member of the audience that would like to address this issue? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commissioners.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Chesser.
This was also, I was on the subdivision committee for this item also. First thing I'll say is, I was very happy to see the on-street parking going in this area. I feel like we're getting a free road diet out here, which is great. Second thing I'll say is, I agree that the architectural designs meet our standards. I would have really, and I mentioned this in subdivision committee too, I would have really loved to have seen this designed in such a way that the downstairs units could possibly, in the future, have been turned to commercial uses if possible. But I'm not sure that that's something we can require at this point. It's just something I would have liked to have seen. I did have one question about one of the, sorry, I'm getting back to it. About one of the determinations, and this is a question, I guess, for staff first and then potentially for the developer. The park fees, this didn't occur to me at the time. I know the developer's having to avoid some wetland areas. Is it ever possible that we would accept something like wetland areas as parks, Andrew?
Under our ordinance, the park land that we accept needs to be able to be used for a park typically. I mean,
So you're saying a wetland couldn't really...
It wouldn't really meet that criteria. So it needs to be something usable that we could use for a park. I mean,
Okay.
That's the general requirement.
That's unfortunate. Okay, so that was the only question about that. So that answers that. Other than those comments, I feel like they've, at least in subdivision, I certainly felt like they'd met the requirements, and I'm generally in favor of it. This is a larger item and more complicated than the ones at Butterfield, so I'm not going to make a motion yet, but I am prepared to do so. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Brown?
Yes. I had a question. I like the look of this subdivision, and what they're doing. And as it relates to the open space, is it possible for them to show a right-of-way across their property after talking to the Parks Department that could possibly be a connection to the trail?
Is this a question for staff or the applicant or?
I'm sorry, for the staff.
Okay, all right, thank you.
When you were talking about the dedication of land, could there be a dedication of a right-of-way that may or may not be utilized in the future to link up to the trail that runs on the other side of the stream from this property?
Yes, that's possible. Large-scale development does allow the city to accept dedication of easements and rights of way.
Just to show it would give the, I think it would be a great idea to link this property up to the trail system. And although it would require some action by the city and also by the owner of the property on the other side of the stream, but it could be something that could be on their master plan and a right-of-way that could be utilized in the future. That was just an idea that I wanted to throw out.
Mr. Garner, could one of staff just kind of show us where the trail is in relation to this property?
Sure. So this is the development site down here where the yellow place marker is, and this is Mud Creek, and this is Mud Creek Trail over here. So I don't think it would be likely to put another bridge, even a pedestrian bridge, over the creek from this development to tie into the trail. I think just the cost of doing so and the environmental impacts to the wetlands would probably make that not feasible, and that's why we haven't recommended it. Our trails coordinator didn't recommend it either. You would have to, as a pedestrian, get here onto Steele, and I think it will be a a better pedestrian experience than it is now, because there will be on-street parking, and get down here to the trail where you could get on that direction. You could also obviously come all the way down and around to get on it, around here at Noodles, restaurant, so, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman?
I just have a couple quick questions. I'm sure some of this is in the drawings, I'm just not quite able to read some of the drawings. So I'm looking at a section, a street section that's in City Plan 2030 that I assume is being used as some sort of inspiration here. The street section that I'm looking at shows on-street parking, it shows a bike lane, and it shows a travel lane. Does this proposal, does this have a bike lane in it, Mr. Fulcher? Or is it just the travel lane and the parking?
It does not have a stripe, and essentially they, with this, the city plan document you're looking at has the Sharrow striped in there on the travel lane, so there would not be Sharrow striped into this travel lane.
Okay, so it's just, in terms of this section, it's a 10-foot travel lane, and then, what's an 8-foot parallel parking lane?
That's correct.
Okay, great, yeah. So I think that's awesome. My only concern, I'm looking at the site plan now, and particularly on the east side of I think that's Van Ash, in front of the project. It looks like there's probably several hundred feet of parallel parking spots. It's kind of the longest stretch of parallel parking spots. And a lot of it seems like it's just basically uninterrupted. And I think that when you're doing things like this, you kind of have to plan for the worst-case scenario. And in my mind, the worst-case scenario would be, nobody parks in those parking spots, which is plausible given the kind of incredible overabundance of parking in this area. And what you end up with there then is basically an 18-foot wide travel lane, which actually goes counter to the stated goal, which I believe of calming traffic here. So I think that one thing that could potentially make this site plan just a little bit better, and it's very good, would be if we could get maybe some curb bump outs once every couple hundred feet in those longer stretches of shared of street side parking. If you'd like to address that.
If it makes any difference, I think we're at 506 parking spaces right now and 538 bedrooms.
Mm-hmm.
So the likelihood, and I completely understand what you're saying, those are long stretches, and I wondered that myself. We're, of course, my charge is to try and acquire as much parking for our client as we can get.
Absolutely.
Because we did use the proximity to the bus route and that sort of thing to justify being under. But if we were able to put more on there, we probably would have put more on there because they're right on that border of feeling comfortable. If they did lose some, obviously I don't think, after all we've been through on this project and the constraints that we've had to deal with, it obviously wouldn't kill it, but it would be beneficial to be able to keep as many parking spaces as they're able to.
Okay, let me get a little bit more specific then. I think that 2 parking spots along, basically one in both of the longest stretches of parallel parking. I think that if you were to take out 2 of those parking spots and add curb bump outs, you would reduce the amount of basically 18-foot wide area from 500 or 600 feet.
We're talking about one east and west of the main entrance?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
We wouldn't have an opposition to that.
Okay.
We'd be able to live with that.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I think I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Hoskins?
I got a question for staff. Apparently, our residential design standards are a little more flexible in C3 zoning. Is that right?
Dan?
No, it's the same standard. The difference is the C3 zoning does not have a build-to zone.
Mhm.
They're still subject to the urban residential design standards because it is a multifamily project.
So what about the stoops at the stoops and the,
It does require the ground floor dwelling units to have entrances to connect to the street. It doesn't, our codes do not require a stoop. So they do have, you can see the sidewalk connections from from the front doors here out to Van Ash, and, they have those along the frontage, and, so, I don't know.
Guess I'm failing to see it. Sorry.
I don't know, just looking at the site plan here, you can kind of see the sidewalk connection.
And that's at the Van Ash, okay, and that comes from apartments and not from a common hallway or whatever?
Commissioner Hoskins, that, each one of those sidewalks, goes to the front door of a unit. And the normal footprint of that unit does not normally have the front porch on it. That was one of the redesigns that, we did, after discussing with staff, to try and bring these in, compliance with the urban residential design standards.
Okay. Guess I was looking at the back elevation too. And is it my understanding that you're gonna have, carports between the building and Van Ash? Am I looking at that wrong too?
There are no carports between the buildings and Van Ash. All the parking is in the back. There are garages, on the north side of those units, that front Van Ash, and on the east side of the units that front steel.
The north side, yes. Man, I tell you what, I guess I'm blind. Okay, thanks.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Chesser.
Well, first of all, as a new urbanist and not a T&D person, I feel a little chagrined that Hoffman caught me out on those bump outs. I didn't catch that. So thank you, Commissioner Hoskins. But given that, and no other current discussion, I'm gonna move, if I can find the number here. I'm gonna move that we approve LSD 15-5167. Finding in favor of condition approvals number 1, 2, 3, and 4, determining in favor of those. Agreeing with staff's recommendations of approval, making note of number 5, especially about the wall going to the wetlands. Agreeing with all their staff recommendations of approval and adding a conditional approval number 19 that staff and the applicant will determine where bump outs that were described in discussion by Commissioner Hoffman be added, and I believe that was along Steele, is that correct? Along Van Ash Boulevard, and I believe the applicant was conducive to that. I see a nod, yes.
Could you please give us more direction? Again, repeat where you want the bump outs exactly. I wasn't following.
Exactly? Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I wasn't following.
So,
Yeah.
Commissioner Hoffman pointed out that there were a couple of stretches along Van Ash that were very long, in the 500 feet range. Actually, I'd say there's a circle right there. How about one right there? Is that okay with you, Hoffman?
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Hoffman.
I think actually what the applicant said would work for me, which is basically to add one on both the east and one on the west side of the main entrance, along Van Ash.
In the middle?
That roughly cuts those stretches in half, yes.
So I'm seeing a bump out right here on either side of the entrance already, so I'm not following you.
An extra one in the long stretch of...
You're saying make the bump out longer?
No. I'm saying that if you take those long, 500-foot stretches of parallel parking, and just basically chop those in half.
Okay, just mid-block.
Mid-block bump out,
Mid-block
replacing
bump out.
2 spaces.
Okay.
And I think 2 spaces is reasonable given the constraints that the applicant mentioned.
Okay, got it. That makes sense.
And that is what I'm trying to move. So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to approve with an additional condition of approval Number 19, made by Commissioner Chesser, and a second by Commissioner Hoffman. Mr. Garner, would you please call the roll?
Noble?
Yes.
Selby?
Yes.
Autry?
Yes.
Hoskins?
Yes.
Chesser?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Cook? Hoffman?
Yes.
Bunch?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Our next item of new business is rezone 155156, 1220 West Cleveland Street, expired PZD 12-4079. Mr. Thompson, would you please give us the staff report on that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This property is an expired PZD that may be familiar to some of those that have been on the Planning Commission for a few years. This was the former Project Cleveland site. The site was never built. The project was approved, but the land was purchased by the university, and the project therefore could not be built. But as it stands, the zoning has fallen away. The PZD's expired, and we don't have any active zoning on this property at this time. And we are in the process of cleaning up a lot of these expired PZDs, and this one's on the list for this week. The proposal would be to rezone these properties from the RPZD Project Cleveland to a mixture of RSF4 and P1 institutional property that is now the university-owned property. So the RSF4 parcel was a parcel to the north that was RSF4 before this project was rezoned to RPZD. The P1 portion is, although the university doesn't follow our zoning code and is not subject to it, would be appropriate for that use, for that university use, the P1 institutional. So we feel that these are both appropriate and will suit compatible, with the development, existing development nearby, compatible with the future land use plan, and would recommend that you forward this with your recommendation for approval.
Thank you very much. Do we have an applicant present on this? You are. I'm totally blanked on that one. Is there any member of the public that would like to discuss this item? Seeing none, I close the floor to public comment and bring it back to the commissioners.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Cook.
Yep, this totally makes sense. I mean, obviously, the university owns their piece of land and would return that single-family house back to residential or SF4, so I'll make a motion to forward rezone 15-5156 to the full city council with a recommendation of approval.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to forward, made by Commissioner Cook and a second by Commissioner Brown. Mr. Garner, would you please call the roll?
Madam Chair?
Sorry.
One point of discussion, if I may, which is just to, I know that the university isn't subject to our regulation, but to lodge a bit of a complaint that they can build a parking lot unrelated to anything else. And I feel like we're sort of tacitly approving that. And I know there's nothing we can do because they outrank us, but I wanted that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Again, we have a motion made by Commissioner Cook and a second by Commissioner Brown. Mr. Garner, would you please call the roll?
Noble?
Yes.
Selby?
Yes.
Autry?
Yes.
Hoskins?
Yes.
Chesser?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Hoffman?
Yes.
Bunch?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Our next item is, lost my place here, rezone 155165 for 1118 South Dunn Avenue, Pearson Development. Mr. Thompson, you are the planner on that. Would you please give us the staff report?
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Would like to, I would like to read that staff report. The subject property here is, it's an undeveloped lot. It's north of, it's on Dunn Avenue. That is just adjacent to the National Cemetery. On one side, there's a large mixed or multifamily apartment complex that's a few years old to the north, electrical contractor to the east. So this is a mixed area. This property is quite small. It's just 0.23 acre, and in the I-1 zone. The applicant has requested that this be rezoned to NC, Neighborhood Conservation. They would like to build stated they would like to build a home of approximately 300 square feet for himself and his family. The staff feels that, again, this is compatible with this neighborhood. It is also a down zone from the industrial zoning. We feel that it also is in perfect accord with the future land use map, which calls this a residential neighborhood area. So it's a perfect fit from staff opinion, and we would recommend that you forward this with your recommendation of approval.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. Is the applicant present? Come on up and state your name and tell us a little bit about your project.
My name's Will Schmidt. I submitted the paperwork on behalf of Pearson Development. It's presently under contract. The person that's wanting to purchase the property is, like he said, wanting to build a smaller, energy-efficient house on the property.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
We'll call you back up if we have any other questions. Is there any member of the public that would like to discuss this issue? Seeing none, I bring it back to the commissioners.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Chesser.
this seems straightforward to me. I don't know if 300 feet counts as a tiny house or not, but that's kind of cool.
It actually does.
I like this idea, and we can't really consider that portion, but either way, I think this rezone is appropriate, so I'm going to move that we forward RZN 15-5165 to the City Council with the recommendation of approval.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to forward made by Commissioner Chesser and a second made by Commissioner Autry. Mr. Garner, would you please call the roll?
Noble?
Yes.
Selby?
Yes.
Autry?
Yes.
Hoskins?
Yes.
Chesser?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Hoffman?
Yes.
Bunch?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Our next item is rezone 155179, 324 North Hornsby Drive, Markham Hill. And Mr. Fulcher, would you please give us the staff report on that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a couple of existing lots that are developed with single-family homes on Hornsby Drive and Smith Avenue. The lots are in two different subdivisions, platted in around the 1950s. The applicants are requesting to rezone lots 2 and 3 of Hornsby Edition, so these would be the two lots on the west side. They're along Hornsby. The north end of the cul-de-sac, those would go from RSF4 to RSF8. That's about a half an acre. And then lots 1 through 4 and 6 of Smith's Edition, which is along Smith, would go from RSF4 to Neighborhood Conservation, and that's about 3/4 of an acre. Applicant stated in their letter their intent is to remove the existing homes, replat these lots into a few extra lots, and then redevelop each of the lots with single-family homes. Neighborhood Conservation and RSF8 only permit single-family homes. That's really the only thing they can build. To I think, further restrict themselves and to show the neighborhood that I know that they've met with previously, they provided a bill of assurance saying these will only be single-family units on this property. We won't come back and ask for something else, so they've further restricted themselves beyond what the zoning code even provides. In looking at it, existing neighborhood is single-family to the west. There's university-owned property to the east and south. This is definitely one of those trickier areas. Having worked on many development proposals, I understand the Markham Hill area, made up of a number of subdivisions, a lot of historic homes, all single-family homes, all zoned RSF4, so it's a very tricky area when you're right here on the boundary to maintain that single-family character of the neighborhood, and especially the zoning. These zoning districts are single-family districts. They're slightly more dense than RSF4. And really, I think what we looked at, when you look at the context of this property, on one side you have a parking lot. And so that's the neighborhood conservation side. That's where we felt that upping the density even a little bit higher than our sept would be appropriate, because they're looking at over university-owned and maintained property over the recreational facilities along Razorback Road as well. And so we feel that both zoning districts, RSF 8 along Hornsby and neighborhood conservation along Smith, are appropriate. They are compatible. They maintain that single-family character of the neighborhood and allow the property owner an opportunity to redevelop the property in character with this area. So we are recommending that it be forwarded to the City Council with a recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant present? Please state your name and tell us about your project.
Yes. My name is Robert Sharp, and I'm representing Brian Rondell, the owner of the property. Just to be very brief, the idea is the existing houses were built sometime in the late 60s, early 70s, and they've kind of run their course. They have cracked foundations and low ceilings and a lot of trouble, and so the intent is to kind of develop this area, and again, in single-family housing manner. We had productive meetings with planning staff to develop this proposal, and then we were invited to the Ward 3 meeting Ward 4 meeting to discuss the proposal in more detail with the neighbors, and that's where the bill of assurance came from, is that they wanted that additional layer of security. We weren't going to pursue conditional uses or things like that. But we've worked hard to come up with a proposal that is appropriate for this site. It's a real tricky site because there's a 70-story tall football stadium on one side and a single-story ranch house on the other, so it's a little bit transitional. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you or the public may have.
Thank you very much. Is there any member of the public that would like to discuss this item? Please state your name and give us your comments.
My name is Margaret Clark, and I live on Hornsby Drive. And I really recognize that whatever I might say is probably futile. However, I thought I would at least voice my comments. And in the first place, what is going to be happening is that the whole concept of neighborliness is destroyed, inasmuch as there's no way now whereby one would be able to say to a neighbor, would you watch my home when I'm away, something of that sort. So that is already a given. And secondly, I recognize that a number of, the beauty of the area is going to be destroyed because we have homes that are there, and yes, they are there. They were built some years ago. I'm also on the Washington County Historical Society, and we are into preserving homes. And so I recognize that many homes in this city have been preserved over the years. So it's, yes, they were built some time ago, but they are still functional. And thirdly, I'd like to say that the homes that have the big trees across the street from me, which will in all likelihood be destroyed in order to build all of the homes that are anticipated, the single homes. So there will be a string of single homes along there with some kind of access between them because they are facing each other with a kind of driveway between them. So in addition to that, when those take place, if I see them as I've looked at the design, I can imagine that traffic is just going to be increased tenfold. When you put up single family homes, well, there are single family homes there now, and there are approximately 5 or 6 individuals that live in each of those homes that are students. And so if we put up those other homes, then that just increases the number of people who will be trying to park. And so where will they be parking? Are they I'm not sure I understood the design as to whether or not that there would be underground parking, or whether there are just going to be parking garages underneath the housing itself. And so if it is that is the case, then they're going to have to come out into the street. So when they come into Hornsby Drive, then the parking, it's a dead-end street, and the little cul-de-sac is not one that enables one to turn around easily. So if you have an emergency and a fire truck comes or an ambulance, how are they going to be able to function in that kind of area with that congestion? So all of those things are things that really concern me, and I know that when the construction starts, it's going to mean that the street will have to be closed a lot, and how do you get out, and or else it is that you will be sometimes delayed in being able to depart. So I think I've covered all of the points that I wanted to get in, and the increase of the traffic and the increase in the parking and all of the changes that accompany that kind of thing. So it is really a concern to me. And I know that there are two other neighbors whose properties are not as easily affected as mine, given the fact that they front onto Markham Road, but they are not included in that plot of land. And I know I know that the owner envisions being able to do the same thing on the other side, in as much as he owns the properties behind me and adjacent to me on both sides, and has been trying to get me to sell my property to him so that he would be able to have that whole block of everything. So that concerns me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Clark. Is there any other public comments? Anyone else? Okay, seeing no more public comment, I will close the floor to public comment and bring it back to the commissioners.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Chesser.
Well, I grew up on Markham Road, farther back, and so I share Ms. Clark's concern about the character of the neighborhood, which I enjoyed quite a bit. I happen to know the applicant's representative spent some time on that road as well. That was many years ago. I was glad, I thank Ms. Clark for her comments. I did have some questions for staff that her questions engendered. One is, let's see, whose item is this, Jesse? Does Hornsby have on-street parking legal or not? Or any comments about the parking situation?
I admit that I did not measure it, but it's not signed. There's very few no parking signs in this area. I don't
So meaning you would assume that it is legal to park on street?
It's not prohibited.
Okay. So in general, I'm in favor of on-street parking because of traffic calming, and I'm sure that there's going to be quite a bit of pedestrian activity in this area. And I'm just going to say that I'm sure that these are all student houses now, and I'm sure that they will be student houses as we move forward. All that said, I feel a little bit of betrayal to my own neighborhood I grew up in and my own ward that I'm in. But as campus inevitably increases in its population of students, I find myself generally in favor of increasing density of student housing near campus in a manner such that students may walk to campus more often than drive, which I think will have ultimately, and this is a little bit counterintuitive, but ultimately will decrease traffic overall rather than increasing it, as you're reducing 2 or 3 trips that those students must make every day to a walking trip instead of a driving trip. I am a little bit concerned about this particular street because I've been there and it is probably a pretty narrow street. I would love to see if we can examine, I don't know, I'm not 100% sure that I'm going to belie my comments about on-street, because in this case I think the streets might be enough traffic control on their own because of their narrowness, but I don't know that. Even given that, I think that in general this density increase in this spot is probably appropriate as a transition between a more traditional sort of larger lot area to the west and the
institutional use to the east. So in general, I guess I am in favor of it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we have, Mr. Hoffman, did you have a question first?
Yeah, just one, just quick comments. I agree with pretty much everything Commissioner Chester said, particularly the fact that I think in areas like this where, you know, where you're next to the campus, where you're next to such a huge draw for people, that I think a lot of the people, as they find some difficulty in parking, will choose to live here without an automobile. I think that they'll move here knowing and understanding the difficulties in the parking situation that are somewhat notorious in this area, and so I don't foresee the you know, cataclysmic parking situation resulting from this development, and I'm generally in support of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, I'd be happy to recognize the applicant.
Okay, I was just about to do that. Mr. Sharp, would you please come back up and address some of the comments that Ms. Clark had?
The first thing I want to discuss is that Mr. Cheshire brought up student housing. The houses currently are student housing, but the future houses are not intended to be student housing. They're at a price point and a size that is not conducive to student housing, and they're intended to be owner-occupied housing. And that's what we told the neighbors at the Ward 4 meeting, and I don't want it to come out that the Planning Commission, that someone's talking about student housing, because that is not what we're talking about.
Okay.
The other thing that needs to be discussed is the concept of neighborliness, which is something that I think is incredibly important, and that the houses that we'll put back are going to be kind of houses that are more public, and they face the street, and they're places to live outside, such as porches and yards, so that there will be a emphasis on supporting street life and neighborhood quality, and that's something that's very important to us. And that addresses the parking issue. The access that was discussed, we've developed shared access and motor courts so that we can really cut the number of curb cuts in half, which is one of the problems with the large houses. It requires lots of parking, and if you put all the garages facing the street, then it kills the street life. So all of our car parking is off of shared driveways, and so that will conceal both the number of garage doors and parked cars, and also have the effect of limiting where the cars can come out, which would help with the traffic situation. So we are trying to mitigate all those aspects. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Chesser?
I move that we forward RCN 15-5179 to the City Council with a recommendation of approval.
Second. Okay, we have a motion to forward to the City Council made by Commissioner Chesser and a second by Commissioner Selby. Mr. Garner, would you please call the roll?
Noble?
Yes.
Selby?
Yes.
Autry?
Yes.
Hoskins?
Yes.
Chester?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Hoffman?
Yes.
Bunch?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. I believe that is our, one more.
One more.
Got one more?
17.
Oh,
Gee, I'm
wrong one.
excited.
Ah! Missed one there. He's about to jump the gun. Okay, our next item is rezone 155174, the south end of Rupel Road,
Big one.
Stryker Development. And Mr. Garner, would you please give us the staff report on that?
This property contains approximately 102 undeveloped acres. It's south of the Mountain Ranch subdivision in West Fayetteville. The western portion of this property was included in a recent rezoning that the Planning Commission saw and the City Council approved in June of over 600 acres along the South Rupel Road corridor. And so the zoning boundary of their property is basically this section line right here, and it extends all the way up the mountain to the east. The applicant's requesting to rezone the property as listed in Table 3, and also is shown in the exhibit in your staff report, and we have the the item downloaded on your iPad so you can zoom in if you want to look at it closer. So I kind of highlighted the areas. The proposal is for 11.81 acres of residential agricultural, 57.74 acres of RSF4 residential single family, 4 units per acre, 20.28 acres of NC neighborhood conservation, and CS community services, 11.88 acres. And that's the purple area over in this area. And just before we came into this meeting, the applicant emailed me a revised request to slightly change their proposal, and that's what I passed out before the meeting. It's not sure if you can really read that or not. It's hard to read on 8.5 by 11, but they were originally proposing to rezone this entire eastern portion to RSF4, and in discussions with the applicant, indicated that the staff wouldn't be in support of rezoning the RSF4 all the way up the mountain because it's really steep, and our future land use plan shows that area to be rural and have larger lots. So they're proposing to back off of that proposal, and they would like the commission to consider this request for this portion of it here. It's up on the screen here. This is the existing, is the top diagram. You can see there's 9.79 acres of RSF2 currently, and I have it kind of highlighted here in green. And then they're proposing here to rezone to 10.93 acres of RSF2. And the applicant did tell you more details of why they need that, but you can see here, they're sketching out the proposed subdivision and trying to get the zoning line to match up with the lot sizes. And so that's really the main reason for that. And staff is supportive of the request as amended and the full request, as you can see before you. The future land use plan, as you've seen, and we discussed this with the previous Rupel Road, it did indicate development along this area. We've anticipated when the road gets built that developments would happen, and I think it is understandable that as developers come through, we'll need to continue to look at these zoning lines and change it to try to accommodate their developments where we feel like it's appropriate. They did remove some of the areas. If you remember, there's some environmentally sensitive areas out here that were rezoned to RA, residential agricultural, and they've looked at their site, done some field site visits, and obviously trying to design their subdivision, and they feel like there's some areas that need more preservation, and some areas don't that we had previously shown. So they're actually increasing the amount of RA from what we originally proposed. And then it's a pretty big change to rezone almost 11 to 12 acres to CS community services. And so if you recall, the CS zoning district, it allows a mix of use. It could allow for single family, multifamily, it could allow for non-residential uses. And in talking to the applicant, they feel like they have the opportunity or the potential to have some multifamily development and or maybe some non-residential uses if the population density hits that point. So that's the reason for their request, and we feel like it generally meets all the policies of our city plan, so we're recommending this go on to City Council for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant present? You are, aren't you?
Good evening, Blake Jorgensen with Jorgensen Associates. Represent our client tonight, and sorry for the last second change. We got some, Andrew and I have been having a dialogue. It goes back 2005, 2007. There's a lot of history in Rupel Road. We're excited that it got started today. Things are moving along, and this project's, it's had various different versions in front of the council and the commission. This is the last request, and we're hoping that with this final little revision to our request, the commission can find favor in it. And if y'all have any questions, we'll be happy to answer it. So thanks.
Thank you very much. Is there any member of the public that would like to discuss this item? Now's your opportunity. Seeing no public comment, I bring it back to the commissioners.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Brown?
I'm really happy to see that the work between the petitioner and the planning staff has netted I think, an excellent, change from the R4 to the R2, especially on the hillside area. I think I'll be able to definitely approve this one. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Chesser?
I guess question for staff, and I'm sorry for misremembering this, but is the proposed RA the part where we had some students in discussing some flora and fauna in this area?
It doesn't exactly, yeah, this was the general area of the city where they came in and talked about, the crayfish, frog, and things that, yeah.
Right, that's what I thought. And the RA is intended to keep that corridor for them to move back and forth, it looks like to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it was, if you remember, we discussed it and tabled it a couple of times, I believe.
Right.
They had not done any actual field surveys. They kind of showed an area they thought was, good for the wet prairie habitat. The council ended up rezoning the areas mainly along the floodplains. So it didn't exactly match up in the final rezoning with, the area right across the street from Woolsey Wet Prairie, where that was where they were talking about they crossed. But, so that, it was a little, I think I think the council certainly took all that into consideration, and that's our future land use plan map did as well.
But the current RA is generally analogous to what we had sort of agreed upon in that. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I too will say that I'm happy that the developer was willing to change to R2 in the spot where staff asked. In general, I'm glad that they're proposing some CS and NC where they are in anticipation of density in the future, which I think will probably happen. And I'm going to go ahead and make a motion, and people can discuss if they want. I'm going to move that we forward RZN 15-5174 to, as amended on this sheet, and as discussed by staff, to the City Council with a recommendation of approval.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Hoffman?
just have a couple of additional comments. I just want to echo a lot of the comments that have already been made about, I like a lot of the things that have been done here. I particularly like that I feel like I'm literally looking at a transect right now. It's not often that this is such a large request, and it's not often that we get to see that whole kind of cross section of the transect. But I think there's some really good possibilities for it to be operative here. My only concern, and I know this isn't really up for discussion here, but since you put a plan on the plan, I'm going to comment on it. There's about 4 too many 3-sided intersections and elbows that, I think, I understand that stuff slows down cars, and we all like that, but it also makes it a little bit more difficult than it should be, in my opinion, to walk from one end of this, theoretical transect to the other if you're constantly having to go around blocks. So I know you're going to continue to develop this, and I'd just like you to look at that if you could. Thank you, and I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion to forward made by Commissioner Chesser and a second by Commissioner Hoffman. Mr. Garner, would you call the roll, please?
Noble?
Yes.
Selby?
Yes.
Autry?
Yes.
Hoskins?
Yes.
Chesser?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Hoffman?
Yes.
Bunch?
Yes.
Motion passes.
That is our item tonight. Do we have any public comments? Do we have any announcements, subdivision, any,
Yeah, I do have, thank you. I do have an announcement. Subdivision Committee is this Thursday, September 17th. Team Hoskins, Selby, and Noble. So 9 in the morning at room 326. We just have one item. It should be quick.
okay. Thank you very much. This concludes our meeting. We're adjourned.